Hey guys, welcome back to episode 4 of Road to 1800. Um, Once again, I don't really have much to say for the intro this time, but we get the white pieces, and we can finally play the King's Indian attack in a video. Um, I think I've said this before, but I don't actually know a whole lot of theory for this opening. What I know is that when I see E pawn push, I play D3 to prepare knight to D2. And also stop my knight from getting kicked out in this square. Um, yeah, I can play this. I don't know why I was taking so long to uh, count if I could. And we get a closed center, so I believe in the King's Indian attack, you're supposed to let them castle kingside, and then when the rook is on E1, you push H4, and then you're supposed to play knight F1, knight H2, something like this. Um, but also an idea from the King's Indian attack I know, or the Pierce defense I know, is that I want this outpost for my knight, to prevent some queen side attack ideas, and since they haven't castled yet, I'm going to secure that first with A4. B5 cannot happen because they would lose their rook, pretty much, or more technically a pawn. If they're not careful, they could lose this pawn, but they pin my knight. Since the center is closed, I think it's safe for me to play h3 and kick this out. And if they take, I could play bishop takes or queen takes. The question is which one would be better. I think either way, I'm moving out of the way to play f4, so I don't think it matters, but let's take with the queen. Simply keeping an eye on this file, just in case. You can also sneak in here, perhaps. We'll keep it simple, play queen e2, and then just push f4. I think this position simply looks a lot like the King's Indian attack, but for the white pieces. Alright, we get this b5 push. After takes, take arrows, please. Takes. My knight is forced away. I could play here and reroute it to an attack here. Um, I hate to not keep an eye on this pawn, but I don't think that's possible right now. I'm playing knights to f3 because this pawn will be defended by my queen on e2. Okay, this is not hanging, there's a rook there. I could bring my knights to the h file to push the f pawn. I don't like this as much because there's this pawn push, but also I would get this outpost actually for my knight. Plus I'd be attacking this pawn, they'd have to deal with that. And then if they push, that hangs the pawn that would be on this square. I think simply we can just defend like that, and then here, there might not be a way to do that. There's very few defenders on their king side. So I'm also looking at ideas of bishop sacrifice, knight f5, but I don't see how my queen gets in to support. We could simply ignore this bit of the board and then just push, which I think is my best bet right now because I don't see a practical way to defend this pawn. Let's take this pawn here. And then once they take back with the rook, this pawn is free because after takes, I have rook takes. I think I can just threaten checkmate here. This knight is doing nothing on any of these squares. This pawn is pinned. Okay. Um, Bishop takes. The last thing I want is for this pawn to move. Check, here is forced. And then where's my follow-up? Here, takes, here. I believe this is forced. There has to be something there. I could also just take here directly. After takes, check. This is forced. And then here, 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 this is mate. The reason I didn't take the rook is because the knight would jump here. This is also mate. King's Indian attack for the white pieces. Let's see how much of that was actually forced and how many checkmates in 4 I missed. Okay, so this position is surprisingly equal. That was the correct move. And this is where my opponent made the mistake. I didn't consider it because it looked so wild. It looks like this was best or on par with best. Taking here was also good, but queen takes was better. Um, yeah. So what happened was that we played there. And I missed mate in one here. Oh my god, this is mate. Wow, that would have been so sad for my opponent if I had actually seen that. There was also oh yeah, that was the only mate in one. Never mind. That was a game, so on to game number 2 of the video. 1437. Just another 363 points to go. My opponent seems to be unsure of what their opening is. They're playing d4. Based on the length of time that they use to play that, either they are in the middle of something and this will be an easy game, or they are just trying out a new opening. And it looks like they're trying out the Queen's Gambit to me. This move is certainly one on the board. I can see that it should probably be a mistake, but I'm unsure of how to punish it. Maybe c6. Okay. Let's take here. Simply loosen the center. Play d6. Um, a5 secures the outpost on this square, quote unquote. The issue with playing e5 here for me is that if they take, and I take with the bishop, I have an isolated pawn, but if I take with the f pawn, then I have a weaker king. So I don't think I want to push the e pawn at all in this position. So let's play knight e7 and just look for this outpost for the moment. I'm aware I should be developing. Will probably play something of queen d7 after. Maybe now would be a good time to castle. I was slightly worried um about the oddness of the opening being a factor in just like castling here they played this, but now that they've castled kingside, I'm okay with it. Works to the center of the board. Let's play. I could take a leaf out of the Caro-Kann, and I could start my minority attack on this side. Let's play here, because if I play queen b6, they're just going to defend the pawn. But I could play bishop c7 or d7, and I want to break on this square and then try to weaken these pawns with these. This is one of the moves. Ah, I see. They're attacking my pawn. Let's pin the knight while defending the pawn with the queen. Okay, we trade. And I know that after trading off that knight, there is always a weak square right here, but it can't really be exploited because I would hang this pawn in doing so. Let's play rook e8. We no longer have a light square bishop, so breaking on this square is going to be very difficult, actually. It's very well defended, because of this bishop x-ray, this knight. I think my best approach will be to move one of my knights here and try to convince them to trade off this bishop for my knight, and then start using the dark squares as a weakness because they do have the bishop pair, and that's not ideal for me. This knight is controlling these squares. Now I really can't push e5. Now there's a question of, should I be trying to get rid of this knight? I could get rid of it with this, because this knight is on a very nice square in my opinion, since we are planning on attacking the queen side. We could also play bishop here for a sneaky battery here, but it's defended by the queen. Let's simply go with this idea of attempting to convince them of a bishop trade for the knight. Backing the rook here would be quite a ridiculous idea. I don't see any attack coming from that other than, okay, they take, other than this pawn. Rook c2. I don't see the idea of that move. It could just be waiting. I think it would be best to trade off this knight so that we can push a4. So let's play this way. We could also attack this weak pawn. But is it worth it? After pushes, then we could jump back here. This pawn is weak. But it's also defended by the rook. Are they planning on sacking on the bishop? All of my pieces are on the queen side now. So if that happens, there is a chance that they could actually start an attack. I can't play here because then I would lose this center pawn and isolate this one. Let's play here. And then trade off the knight. What I think my opponent is doing is that they aren't correctly using the light squares. They're offering a queen trade. I'm not so interested. But this seems very passive. After takes, I think it's better to play here and trade off the active knight because their bishop is locked in just all of this. And their rooks are kind of just staring at a pawn defended by my bishop. So it'd be not in their favor to attack this pawn unless they had a dark square bishop or a knight to attack it. But their knight is over here. And I believe the fastest way that they could get to this square would be something of this, or not. Something like that, even though it's defended. I don't see what the queen is doing on d3. So we'll just trade off the knights. Hilariously, I still can't break on this square. Quite unfortunate. We'll play this first to fix the pawn chain. That way, once I push here, they can't push here. This is either a really advanced idea or I'm overthinking it. My thought process is they're waiting for me to bring my rook up here, then they could sacrifice and take this rook. Bishop back should solve that though. Then something of this. I might even play bishop f8, where it's not on f6, so it can't be taken. It's very passive on this square, though. Not a huge fan. We get the queen trade offer once again. We can attack the weak pawn in the corner. And I have to take back with the queen because of the rook on f3 if they choose to take this pawn. Oh, did I just trap my queen? No, there's the bishop on g7. Because if they had pushed, all of those squares are controlled by my opponent. Okay, I think simply we could just take here ourselves. I'd assume that they would take back with the pawn, yes, because you don't want to have an isolated pawn in the corner. That's usually not a good thing. Play queen back here, looking for this break now. They might offer another queen trade. And if that happens, I'm just going to defend with this pawn, have it control these two. Yeah, let's defend with this pawn because this is isolated, but it's not a backwards pawn. I'd rather have my pawn structure fixed. And then this is a very weak pawn that I could stack my rooks on. Of course, they have the light square bishop, I have the dark square bishop, so it's going to be very difficult to capitalize on this, but their bishop is locked in the very corner. We have a minute left, but that should be enough. This is very close to an endgame if it isn't one already. Let's play this to guard this square. And after this pawn moves, we could play bishop e5, completely closing this diagonal. Let's play here. I think this pawn is impossible to save now for my opponent. And then after this trade, um, we should come back and guard the back rank. This pawn would be nigh impossible to win. Might even play king f8. Maybe look for this. Just winning some tempos. Trying to bring my opponent's clock down to the to a similar time that I have. Okay, we close this on the light squares. I believe this is in my favor, simply because I'm up a pawn. Coming to defend the e7 pawn. And our best bet might be to attack this pawn chain that they have. Rook g8, we simply defend. And it doesn't matter that we lose this pawn, we gain this one. No, we don't. Um, well, I went on time, but if I had taken this pawn, then there would be a fork right here. So this is actually a free pawn. And the computer thought that it was a draw from this position, so attacking the pawn chain was the wrong idea. What I should have done, I believe, is just played this, playing solid. Yeah, I see it now. And, well, I think that should be good for episode 4. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys next time.